talking Silent Night, Zombie Night, a 2009 movie directed and written by Sean Kane and has appearances from Felissa Rose and Vernon Wells. And it's a zombie film basically taking place over the kind of the Christmas week, and it starts more or less straight away and focuses on two cops and one of the cops' wives. And these three characters end up at the beginning of the movie experiencing the start of the kind of zombie outbreak, so to speak. And the three of them are holed up in this kind of apartment belonging to one of the cops. And as we kind of go through the movie, we meet a smattering of other survivors. And ultimately, the plan to try and survive. So, what do we think works with this movie? I mean, it's a low-budget, somewhat kind of self-contained movie, focusing mainly on a small cast in a kind of small location. Now, one thing that this movie does that I would normally complain about, but I actually think in this movie it actually quite works, is it gets straight in there. We don't really get much setup. The zombies appear within the first few minutes of this movie and start attacking. And it gives it this kind of sense of just how quickly and unexpectedly this kind of wave of undeadness kind of is sweeping across Los Angeles, and how our characters have to kind of react kind of to it, really. So you feel like this is kind of coming out of nowhere, and we don't really know our kind of two cops. I mean, we learn that they've been friends, and through a little bit of a dialogue there's been some type of disagreement, but outside of that we really know nothing about them. But this kind of unusual start, I think, sometimes doesn't work. In fact, most of the time, but in this instance, I actually do think it actually works quite well, giving you this kind of sense of just how unexpected this kind of this zombie menace was, and it really puts these characters in a more of a reactive state. So I kind of quite liked it, and as the film progresses, we do learn more about their relationships and how they kind of interact with one another. So that I did enjoy. The movie has some interesting zombie mythology, and we learn that there's actually two types of zombies: the slow-moving Romero shufflers, and then the kind of the fast-moving, seemingly slightly kind of more intelligent versions. And you know these ones because these ones have like red eyes. So I thought that was interesting, and there's even a little bit of kind of dialogue that gives you an idea that there may be some type of literal parasite which is in the kind of the more intelligent ones, causing them to obviously be like that. But we don't know, we get this kind of idea of there are differences, but the movie doesn't go into how or why or anything like that. But I actually think it worked in this movie's favour, because you just learn as much as our characters do. So you are on the journey kind of with them. I actually quite like some of the kind of the decisions based on the human characters. Now, normally in zombie films, we spend a lot of time with, humans are as bad as the kind of the zombies. And it's an interesting idea, but it's one that I feel is kind of been overdone. One of the aspects I liked about this movie is there's no real kind of like bad guy human characters. There are some who have disagreements maybe, but no one is out and out a bad guy in regards to our kind of human characters, which I thought was, it makes it for an interesting and slightly different take. It might only be a minor thing, and some may even argue that is, boring in some ways, but I actually kind of quite liked it. Any kind of individual or group of humans that we kind of come across, there may be disagreements, but they're ultimately all kind of like about kind of keeping the kind of the humans alive and things like that. Again, I quite liked it. There are some kind of interesting and kind of quite well executed VFX in regards to the kind of the zombies. I mean, you could argue that these zombies look like they have a severe amount of decay, and it's relatively only a quick time since the zombie menace has started, which maybe doesn't kind of lend itself to realism, but it makes the zombies look a little bit more scary and kind of interesting in regards to their makeup, and also the kind of the VFX in regards to like the squibs and things like that, and the kind of the gore. It's not particularly over gory, but I do think that they've used like practical kind of squibs and things like this. There's a little bit of CGI muzzle flashes, and this is the 2009 movie, so it's not brilliant CGI. But for the most part, the VFX and the kind of like the violence and the gore is done kind of practically and kind of done well. The movie actually has a surprising amount of pathos in it. There are some kind of emotive scenes, and we do have some more dramatic moments within the movie. And with a movie with a title like this, you think it's going to be more of a kind of zombie comedy, but it's just not the fact. This is actually taken kind of quite seriously, and has some genuinely dramatic moments within the film. The acting is pretty solid. I think you get a good idea of who these kind of characters are and their relationship, and you can believe them in their roles. So what doesn't work? I mean, the whole Christmas theme here seems very superfluous. It doesn't really feel like it has much to do with Christmas. It just happens to take place over the kind of the Christmas period, and that's just really in the background. So it really is kind of like a Christmas film in as much as Die Hard is a Christmas film. It just happens to take place over Christmas, although Christmas itself doesn't have actually kind of much to do with it. One VFX element which I didn't like, outside of some CGI muzzle flashes, and I see this in a few zombie films, and I always question why filmmakers do this, is to have some dodgy wigs. I mean, just have the actors with their natural hair. Why do these zombie actors have, like, a lot of them have really obvious dodgy wigs? I don't understand. Just have actors using their natural hair, or have, if you want them a different haircut, hire an actor who's got long hair or something. It seems really weird. It just seems like so cheap in some kind of sequences. Anyway, that might be a relatively kind of minor issue, but it kind of sticks out and it looks a little goofy at times. There's a distinct lack of scale in this movie. Obviously, it is a low-budget film, but we don't really ever see outside of this kind of small kind of neighbourhood or anything like that. There's very little in regards to kind of like outside communication with like phones or TV and stuff like that. So we know very little about the kind of the world around it and things like this. So it does seem a little bit too self-contained to a certain degree. At the end of the day, it doesn't really do anything too new with the kind of the zombie genre, and it's just a kind of a zombie outbreak film, and how are people kind of dealing with it, and that's kind of what a lot of the zombie films are, especially the low budget ones. Very few offer anything actually new to kind of say. And there's one or two, but generally speaking, it's just kind of more of the same. And when it comes down to it, it's not a particularly kind of deep story. Ultimately, if you're looking at it for a narrative, it feels like a standalone episode from kind of like The Walking Dead or something like that. It's kind of very much doesn't have a huge kind of arc in regards to narrative thread. And one thing that kind of always, I think, irritates me to a certain degree, there's forced drama with a love triangle and things like, typical kind of like extra kind of drama to kind of pad out the running time and give our kind of characters conflict outside of the threat outside the window with these kind of zombies. I mean, there's this like, how many love triangles are in these kind of Star films? It just happens so often. So overall, I would actually give this a slightly above average score, to be honest with you, because I do feel, it's being a somewhat run-of-the-mill zombie film to a certain degree. It's kind of quite well made and entertaining with kind of believable characters, even though it's kind of not going to really be remembered, I don't think, and be classed as any type of classic. It doesn't do anything really too new with the kind of the genre, but it's certainly watchable if you are a zombie fan. And as I say, I think the craftsmanship and the kind of the kind of the gore and effects and things like that are all pretty solid. So I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.